Welcome to the How to Do Your 20s podcast. In this episode, we were talking with Jordan Rabanovich about backpacking, couchsurfing, and the nomadic lifestyle. Jordan is a longtime friend and someone I respect very much. In fact, he's the one that inspired me to try out backpacking, and he's the person who told me about Couchsurfing website in the first place, which the Couchsurfing website has added a ton of amazing experiences to my life. So Jordan, why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience in life, how you got involved in backpacking, couchsurfing, and being nomadic?
Well, it all started back in at the end of high school, in freshman year of college. I was going to school not too far away from our hometown, and everyone I was going to school with was just also people from our hometown. And I had been all excited to go to college for like doing creative collabs and learning new things and, and a new experience, but I wasn't really getting that, and everyone was just kind of partying, which, I did a bit of, but it wasn't really like getting me jazzed to be alive. So I studied abroad. I forget how I found out about it, but it was a really pretty simple process, and pretty much everyone got accepted. So at 19 years old, I studied in France, southern France, for a year, 2 semesters. And while I was there, at first I was just trying to like chill in France and like learn some new music. I was going to buy some Ellen bagpipes and learn those. But then some people were talking to me, and then some people were telling me how cheap flights they were getting all over Europe. And then someone mentioned couchsurfing. And so I decided to save that money and spend it on traveling instead. So my winter vacation came along, and I flew to Eindhoven, the Netherlands, and went to all the coffee shops, and then went to Amsterdam, and I used Couchsurfing all around there, and made a really good friend that I stayed with as recently as a couple of years ago. Anyway, so that was my first trip. It was a marijuana-themed trip. Did mushrooms for the first time, and I don't know how relevant this is to the podcast itself right now, but I think doing mushrooms that first time on Christmas Day in Amsterdam is actually what opened me up to all this. Because from that point on, I think they open up something inside you to make you think differently. But anyway, so then after that, in February, we had like a spring break, and then I flew with some friends to Belgium, then we went to Ireland and rented a car. And that's when I realized I didn't want to travel with people anymore. So I was slowly transitioning into my backpacker mode, I guess. And then
You said you didn't want to travel with people anymore, or?
Yeah, because I was like traveling with two girls and a guy, and we were like renting a car, and it was always about like, oh, who wants to do this? Okay, what do we do? And then some people don't want to share their mind because they don't want to bother other people. Other people just want to do this. And then I realized I just want to be alone. I don't want to deal with other fucking people. Like, especially a group setting, I can handle one person a lot better than 3. And every time I do find myself in a group travel setting, I end up like going off on my own. But, so that happened, and then after that, all our little breaks, weekend trips, I would just go around. I had some couchsurfers stay with me, and one of them was a mid-40s woman who had just burnt all her belongings and packed her necessities in a suitcase, burnt the rest of her belongings after she broke up with her boyfriend, quit her job as CEO of some tech company, and just was backpacking through Europe, and she was kind of wild, and so her perspective changed a lot. And meanwhile, another couchsurfing dude, an artist from Texas, he was just working his way along the coast, painting murals in different hostels in exchange for staying. And they were just like living it up. And I was like, what the fuck? And here I am being like 19, 20 years old. And I'm like, I want to do this. Like, why should I go finish school? Why should I like get a job? Like, they seem to be doing pretty well. And so anyway, then I hitchhiked for the first time with them, and hitchhiking really opened up the door, because once you learn how to do cheap flights, that's cool. But once you learn I already learned couchsurfing, right? How to get, free accommodation and make a friend. And then you learn free transportation, and it's more exciting, and you almost make better friends at couchsurfing because it's not something you choose. It's something that just happens. And so, I hitchhiked all around Europe for like a week or 2. Just got a taste of it. And after that, the ball was rolling. So that's how I got into it all.
So did you end up going back and finishing college, or you just said screw it, I'm gonna keep
No,
doing this?
I said screw it, and I told my mom, and I actually dropped out for one semester. I worked a bunch full time in Hollywood, made up a grip of cash, and then I went down to Central America, to Costa Rica, and worked on a farm, and then backpacked my way up to Nicaragua. Made some amazing friends. Much different type of backpacking because you're in, a cheaper place than Europe, and started smoking cigarettes, drinking a lot, that whole thing, playing music. A lot more chill out lifestyle. That was back before Wi-Fi was really a thing. That was back before anyone had a smartphone. No one traveled with laptops, and very few people I knew or I came across traveled with laptops, including myself. So everything was a lot more zen and peaceful now, and I kind of miss that because I don't think I'll ever go back to that, and I don't think really anyone can ever go back to that, because even if you do travel without the technology, you're still surrounded by it, and you still have access to it. Like at this little hostel we're staying at here, this permaculture place, there's a computer here, and there's really fast Wi-Fi, so even if I didn't have a computer, I'd be able to be on the internet as long as I wanted.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I dropped out for the one semester, did that little trip, came back to work, and then I was like getting bored and lonely, so I went back to school to be around people my own age, because I was around a bunch of middle-aged men that they were great people, don't get me wrong, but they were boring, and their whole lives were about bills, and their whole lives were about, oh my God, am I going to get a raise, or oh my God, the boss is coming, and what are we going to get for lunch today? That's the one thing that got to me, was that the most exciting part of everyone's day was always about what are we going to get for lunch. And I was sitting there 20 years old, and I'm like, if my life ever becomes about what I'm going to eat for lunch, if that's ever the highlight of my day, it's great. It's the highlight of my moment when I'm eating lunch. Like, I love lunch. But if it's ever what I'm looking forward to all day, like, shoot me now. So, yeah. So I went back to school. I was still working that job. And then I went back to school. Then I studied in Mexico for a summer semester to learn Spanish. And then I had one more year, and I finished actually on time. So I not only had dropped out of school for a semester, and I dropped out wrong. So instead of just an empty semester, they just put a bunch of Fs and withdrawals on my transcript. But I graduated on time with like a 3.8 GPA, I think. Not giving a fuck. Like, I only finished because my mom really wanted me to. And then sure enough, as soon as I finished, I was actually getting into it. I studied French literature, so it became relevant because I was learning languages and learning a lot about politics and history, which is a huge part of traveling anywhere. And I realized that stuff really interests me, so it kind of plays a role in what I'm doing now. Not really, not yet, but I think there's something lingering in the subconscious regarding those kinds of things.
And so how do you fund your travels? So you said that you worked for a couple months and then you went, and currently is that what you tend to do? Or?
I mean, it's changed a lot. Like, I don't know how you classify me in your head or how anyone would, I guess there's no classification, but I'm kind of always doing something different. It's normally just in a new place, right? So, so yeah, I mean, coming from where we left off, right? I was working almost full time for a company in Hollywood. I was making bank, fat stacks, and then as soon as college ended, like, I had a lot of money in the bank, and then there was a new California tax thing going on that year where if you were a full-time student and you worked a bit, like, you got an awesome tax return. So I left college with no student loans and more money in the bank than I've seen since. So me and my girlfriend at the time, we went to France, where I had some friends. A good friend of mine from college, he grew up in, Sweden, but his mother is French. So he had property out in the countryside of France. So we went there, a bunch of us from college, and kind of we were making like an artist colony or something. So my intention at the time was to like write this awesome novel, get it, sold and get famous and, make money. So that didn't happen, but yeah, so we went to France and then ended up hitchhiking, from Western France all the way to Albania, and most of that was couchsurfing. But once we got to Albania, we worked at a hostel, and that's where I really buckled up and worked to finish my novel. Then we broke up, and I ended up going all the way to Turkey. So I successfully traveled from Western France all the way across Europe, pretty much, by land, which was pretty sweet. And that was a 6-month trip. So then money was fairly low, and it's cold as shit in Turkey around December, and I'm a California boy. So my mom was missing me, so I flew home. And at that point, I had a friend that was in Bangkok, Thailand, a friend from studying in France, and he was like, yo, it's really cool here. If you ever, like, you should make it to Southeast Asia. It's a really sweet place. And, you know, what happened? Yeah, he was working there. So he had found a job teaching English. He's like, yeah, it's really cool. There's, like, good work. You make a good amount of money. And I was like, okay. Because at that point, I still had the fear of money and not having money in my head. Even though I still had a good amount of money in the bank, I was still, like, worried about not having anything, right? So I cut off all my dreads, and I bought my ticket to Bangkok, and I was, like, ready to, you know, go do my TOEFL course with, like, my last $1,500. And then I went and said hi to my ex-girlfriend, and 2 days later I had my flight, and I couldn't stop thinking about her, so I didn't take my flight. I walked out of the airport like a rom-com. So threw away that $500.
Yeah.
Ended up getting back together with her, and then in Paso Robles, Central California, we did a work exchange on a farm in all these wineries. So we had we worked off our rent, and we actually got paid a little bit. And I was making some websites.
Is that the woofing thing?
It was kind of woofing. This was yeah. We were doing more like cleaning because it was like a resort vacation place, but they did have a farm. We just weren't a part of it because they already had people. So we were just mainly fucking cleaning.
So for people that don't know, can you describe like what woofing is? Because I think you might know a little bit more than I do.
Woofing. Yeah, how I would explain it, woofing is a work exchange where you go work on a farm in exchange for a room and sometimes board. So when I did it in Costa Rica, it was a coffee finca, a coffee farm, mainly. Coffee grows everywhere up there. We were on a hill, and so it was a lot of picking coffee berries, shelling it, and then doing the whole process. We did it all organically with no machines, and then we wouldn't roast the coffee unless we were gonna drink it. And then she would sell the beans, or she would actually bring a lot of the beans home to California. She was a expat Californian. No, how would you say that? She was from England. But then she was living in California for decades, and then she was living half in Costa Rica. So whatever that is, that it was her. Yeah. But yeah, so that was a work exchange. Just had to work a few hours a day in the morning. It was picking berries. It was a lot of like digging out banana trees. Banana trees are in roots or like weeds. They'll just grow. If you don't get every part of the tree out, it'll just grow again, especially in the tropics or subtropics when it's raining all the time. So it was a lot of grunt work for me and the two Austrian guys there. It wasn't a whole lot of intricate, like careful farming, which is a lot, not too much like what's going on here, but a lot more what's going on here for me. Not what I'm doing, but what the people around me are doing. Sorry.
Oh, I see. Oh, no. I just wanted to see if you're currently doing a farming thing, but.
Yes and no. I guess the story. I guess I'll continue with the story because it's pretty relevant to how I got to where I am today. So did that work exchange, and then ended up, finally getting to Thailand. I finally got to Thailand, to Bangkok. Was teaching English. Saw you there, and you saw my life there. It was pretty ridiculous. And like, I finally got out of there after 10 months, and then I was in Hong Kong. And actually, the end of that trip, were we filming the mockumentary while you were there?
You might have been talking about it. I don't really remember.
I think maybe you came in the middle of it when we had finished the preliminary stuff. Okay, so what happened was there with my friend, with a couple friends, they were male models. We filmed like a mockumentary about like some dudes in Thailand just getting drunk. And it was really cool. There was something to it, and it was pretty funny, but nothing ever came out of it yet. Anyway, I've always been doing video stuff ever since I was like a kid and in high school. That was always been my jam. Um, and so that kind of happened in Thailand. Anyway, then my buddy flew me to Hong Kong after Thailand to edit his pilot for his TV show that he wanted to air in Asia. So I had an all expenses paid trip to Hong Kong, and Hong Kong's an expensive place. And so something kind of ticked in my mind, like, wait a minute, like video stuff, computer stuff, people need this stuff done, and I want to travel. So, okay, so that was it. It just kind of stayed in my mind. I didn't think too much of it, but it was there. Like, wait, there could be something there. Anyway, then I flew to Europe. I was, 23 at this point. I saw my sister and my dad in London. And then I went down to France again, to that same house, to write with my buddy. And I was kind of lost. I felt super just depressed and lost in life. Like, shit, dude. Like, I was working full time as a teacher. I tried to do that, and it drove me crazy. And then, like, I was trying to travel, and that was not driving me crazy, but, like, I needed to feel more purpose, I guess. I needed to feel like I was doing something more. And I didn't know what to do. Like, I knew I wanted to write, but that wasn't, like, sustainable, or it didn't really make a lot of sense at the time to just sit around and write. You know, as great as it would be, I still would have to figure out money. I still have to figure out, like, you know, where I'm going. So I got a tattoo right after I had started the whole hitchhiking and traveling thing, and my whole motif with the tattoo was never let your tree stop growing. And if you're ever wondering what to do next, just jump in, kind of thing. Just jump in, which to me at the time meant just travel. This was my advice in my early 20s, is like, if someone's depressed or they don't know what to do with their life, just drop everything and travel. Even if it's just for a few months, just drop everything, have no agenda, and just travel. So that's what I did. I was 23, and like I had been trying to be a professional. I tried to join society, like by having a job, and I just couldn't do it. So I finally was like, fuck it. So I left my computer and everything with my buddy in Paris, and then I just hitchhiked across Europe with no destination. I didn't even have a sleeping bag. I had an iPhone like 3. Not even the 3G, just like the 3. And and I used that for Wi-Fi once in a while. And it worked for finding couchsurfers. I don't know how. But, and yeah, so for about 3-4 months, I just hitchhiked around. And then I made my way to a rainbow gathering, which is like a hippie festival where alcohol is not tolerated. There's no money, no electricity, no technology, just a bunch of hippie people with love in their hearts. Camping out, and we make a community, and there were some like 2,000 people there at the peak, and it was the European Continental Gathering in Slovakia. So a buddy of mine in Austria that I had met back in Costa Rica years before, me and him hitchhiked from Vienna over to Slovakia, not knowing any Slovakian, not knowing where we were going even. We just knew the name of it. We had a general idea of a map, and we'd just be going through these villages, trying to talk to people. We had a blast. It was great. Anyway, so then something happened at that rainbow gathering. I kind of learned how to meditate. I had always been into yoga, but there was something in the energy there, and they call it a transition period. It takes a few days, like when you're coming from the city or from like normal life, and then you get into a rainbow. It's suddenly like, it's almost too much. Like you can't take it. Like everyone's so loving and kind that you think they're out to get you. But
the gathering is called the Rainbow? Is that?
It's called the Rainbow Gathering. Yeah.
The Rainbow. Okay.
It's one of those Fight Club things. They don't want you to talk about it. They don't want like internet pictures or whatever. But I say fuck that. Everyone should know about this shit because it's wonderful. And there are communities online.
Does it only last for like a week, or is it a thing? Is it a community that's constantly?
No, it's a constant thing. So the one I went to was a month long. I think the standard, like, they have country gatherings, they have community gatherings, they have continental gatherings, they have world gatherings. So the continental one that I was at lasted a month, or a moon, from new moon to new moon. And so you come however long as you want, you know. And so and they had this like private forest in Slovakia. So what happens is it's normally in places where it's normally in a developing country, like when you're in those situations, but not always. But what happens is it's really good for the local economy. because we'll still come, we'll buy food. If it's 2,000 people, right, camping out in the forest, they'll come a few months before, and there'll be a team planting a garden to make sure that there's some stuff going on. But in general, like a lot of the produce and food and whatever comes from the local villages or cities. So it's actually really good for the economy. So as far as I know, there's never been, aside from in America, they make us think about it, but everywhere else in the world, when the communities are approached saying, hey, we would like to have this big gathering here, they're always pretty excited because I think the U.S. media tried to make us think about it this year. There was the country gathering in Utah this summer, and there was some bullshit about some people stealing, or I don't know. But
I have so many questions about this now. Like, so many. Wait, so my first question is, so you said money's not really tolerated, right? Or like, how do you get the food then? Oh.
Okay, so what happens is, well, it's a community, right, of love and sharing. I guess community is the key word there, where everything's communal. It's not about what's mine, what's yours. It's about what are we all together. So what happens is there's a hat. Everyone eats together twice a day. However many hundreds or thousands of people are there are people that volunteer to go cook. So for example, when I arrived, right, there was breakfast, and then everyone stands in a circle, holds hands, sings songs around the food to put good energy in it, and then everyone sits down, and then the person that was in charge of, not in charge, they call it a focalizer, the person that was in charge of focalizing the meal says, okay, we need servers. And so then a few people volunteer to come serve, and then they go around and serve all the food. And then as everyone's eating, people will come around and go, hey, I'm hosting a workshop over by that tree 2 hours after we eat. Or, hey, I need a ride to this country. If anyone's going, I'd love the ride. Or, hey, I'm offering a ride. Or so people would go around the circle and just kind of, network in a way. And then after eating, they would, nominate a new focalizer for the next meal. But basically what would happen is a few hours before eating, they'd blow a horn, or everyone would shout. And then as soon as you heard the shout, you would keep shouting, so it spread around the whole radius of the, the whole circumference or whatever the fuck of the fucking crowd. So then basically someone would volunteer to focalize, right? Not be in charge, but because you need someone to organize a big meal, right? So then you'd come and volunteer, and they'd be, okay, you cut the watermelon. Okay, you do this. Okay, you do that, right? And then you would just help as long as you wanted. It was not like, oh, you have to do it this many hours. It's very organic. And it's just about okay, sorry. So then go back to the meal. After the meal, they'd pass around a hat. They called it the magic love hat or something. I forgot. But they go around and sing a song, do a dance, and you'd put your money in if you wanted. So anything you had to offer. And if you didn't have money, you'd put your love in it, right? So then with all that money, with all those funds, it would pay for the next meal or the next day's meal.
How can someone find out? Like, if, let's say I wanted to go do this, or someone that's really stressed out on their job right now wants to drop everything and go to one of these, how do they find out where to go?
These days, same as you'd find out about anything. Google.com.
Yeah.
Okay. Back in the day, you had to get invited. Like when we were going, we legitimately had to have a friend of a friend that knew where it was, email us the invite, forward us the email invite. Then when we were there, we got our emails on a newsletter. It was a big deal. It was pretty secretive. And I remember the day I arrived, standing in the front, and this old man was like, we can't get on the internet. We can't allow ourselves to be on that shit. Because they don't want it to turn into a big festival. It's not about doing drugs and playing music. Well, it is about playing music, but not listening to music. It's about organic music.
Is there a lot of psychedelics there, or?
There is. And so that's where the line is. Nothing's actually not allowed, right? It's just not tolerated. So I brought beer in. I went and bought a bunch of beer one night because I wanted to drink. And it was more about if everyone were drinking the whole time, it would be more of a party, fights would break out. The intention of it is to come be away from everything, to come be peaceful. So yeah, there were psychedelics. I mean, the medicine man had a tent, and he had acid in there, and I spoke to several girls who he administered the medicine to. God knows what else. And I'm sure there were other things. I had friends in the camp next to mine smoking DMT. So yeah, there was plenty of that, but it was just kind of like if you had alcohol, keep it on the down low. You just don't need to advertise that stuff because
Gotcha.
alcohol is not the greatest drug.
Especially for love and peace. Definitely for peace.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, that's the general gist of it. And if you didn't have money to so anyway, what this opened me up to was, I realized, because remember, I had just like quit my job in Thailand. I was like wondering what to do with my life. And here I am, and people just do rainbow hops. They just go from one gathering to another gathering to another gathering, hitching rides, because there's always one, especially in Europe. So I would meet people that have been doing this for years. They haven't had any money, and they were just going from gathering to gathering. Happy and being burdened by
Hold up, something just happened to the sound. I don't know if it was because you changed. Oh, there. That sounds better.
Is that?
That sounds
Hello?
better. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. How far did I get?
Said people were hopping from gathering to gathering.
Yeah. So for years on end, I'd met people that for years had been doing that, and I was like, whoa, that's awesome. And they were all really cool too. It wasn't just like weird ass hippie people. Like they were all like cool people. So I actually considered doing that. And so from there, I left and I hitchhiked down through Serbia to Bulgaria, where the next gathering was, the Balkan gathering. And I never made it to the gathering, actually, because there was a girl I had met that I was stopping to visit, and I was couchsurfing there, and I ended up having like these love affairs with these two different women in Bulgaria and Sofia. And it was never my plan, but it's just kind of how it worked out. And then I went to volunteer on the other side of Bulgaria. Sorry, do you have any more questions about the rainbow before I move on?
No, I'll probably think of some later and bring it back, but go ahead and move on.
Yeah, well, because basically, like, my conclusion on that now would be, like, it's a cool lifestyle to live if you were in a situation like I was, which is don't know what to do with yourself. I personally believe that you should always try to give back to the world. Once you, like, know who you are, or once you know, like, what you're good at or what you have to offer, like that might take fucking forever to figure out, and that's fine. When you're figuring it out, it's like karma doesn't apply. But once you've figured out that you're good at this and you have a unique gift for sharing this and you can do it well and you're confident to do it, once you figured that out, I think you have a calling, and I don't think there's an excuse. So I was slowly figuring that out for myself. That wasn't for me, just hopping around, kind of doing nothing. Like, it's good for a time, and I would definitely do it for a few months now, but I couldn't live my life like that, like I was considering back then. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so then by this point, I wasn't using WOOF anymore, the organization. I was using HelpX. WOOF was like you sign up for one region of the world, and they would send you a bulletin of all the farms needing volunteers, and you'd email or call the farms themselves, right? And then they'd say, oh yeah, come. HelpX was like a nice website. You would make a profile, you'd log in, and it'd show the hosting, like the host list, and it's just way easier and better. And a lot of WOOF farms actually migrated to that system anyway, right? So in this next step of my journey, I was in Bulgaria, and I found a dude, an English guy that had just bought some land in the rural countryside, and he needed help renovating the house. He was making a spiritual meditation healing center. And so I went there not only as a guy to help him move, grunt work, because this was an old man, but also to help him with his website. So at this point, I was advertising myself to these work exchange people, like, yo, I can help you with your computer shit. And I was noticing that that's something a lot of people need. Mm-hmm. A lot of people know how to a lot of the like nomadic hippie types are good at gardening, but not as many of them can handle doing, internet stuff. Maybe that's changing now. But back then, which was 3 years ago, that's what I was feeling, at least back then. So anyway, I went and did that for only a week, because then I had to fly back to Europe, and then I flew back to California later that year. And that's when I still didn't really know what to do with myself, but I just felt better about myself, just about everything. I was feeling good, after you're traveling for a bit and you come quote unquote home, you always just feel good. So I went back to San Francisco for like a month, stayed in LA for like a month, and then I discovered New Orleans. So a friend of mine was Josh Lee. He was road tripping across the country, and he asked me to come with him. He's like, let's make a trip out of it. Let's go see Austin. Let's go see New Orleans. I'm like, all right. So we get to Austin, and then his girlfriend had an emergency, so he had to cut the trip short, and he just zoomed back up to Chicago. And we brought my friend Simone along. And so me and her are just like stuck in Austin on New Year's Eve. And lo and behold, our Couchsurfing host commits suicide on New Year's Eve.
What?
Yeah.
Oh
what
my.
The fuck, right?
Especially, so you guys were staying with him.
Yeah, dude. And two others were staying with him too.
Could you tell something was kind of iffy before this happened, or was it a total shock?
It was a total fucking shock. I mean, it made sense once it happened. Or rather, once we saw all the cops and ambulance outside the parking lot when we got home, we all knew exactly what it was before we heard it. But it wasn't until that it clicked. But basically, this dude was, I think, late 20s, ex-military. He was in Afghanistan, for a few different bouts of service. And, yeah, this dude was, PTSD'd to the max. And he had this girlfriend that he had, like, traveled around the country with to Burning Man. Like, I guess he thought they were really close. And they were having some breakup, get back together things going on. And yeah, so that New Year's Eve before we went out, they got in a big fight, and then, on the phone, and then we went out, and then, it goes, and we all got separated, but then we ran into him on his way home, and it was whatever. Then we met some other people, and we were out, like, really late, but we finally got back, the door was kind of open, and yeah, there was a German girl and a dude from Chicago also staying in the couch in the living room, and he had just moved into this place. We helped him put the IKEA furniture together the day before.
Wow.
And then he had a big TV, a big Xbox, whatever. And, so the next day we we make breakfast. We're like waiting for him to get up. He doesn't get up. So we're like, he probably just doesn't want to deal with his guests. Like, I know what that's like, as a host when I have a million people over and I just want to fucking sleep or something. Like, I'm just waiting for them to leave. I'm hiding in my room. So that's what I was thinking. So we go out. And we come back later that night, and fucking all the cops, and I guess his girlfriend found him. They never told us what happened.
So they didn't question you guys. It wasn't like
they questioned the fuck out of us. Think about it, we're the strangers staying in his house, and that's dead, right?
So did they hold you guys like overnight at the prison?
No,
whatever.
I think it was pretty clear what happened, even though they didn't tell us. But and also the girlfriend could testify about us because she met us, and we all got along well with her, and we were all about the same age, so it wasn't like the weird, like iffy strangers, we were all buddies. So they kept us there in the fucking cold. They asked us each the story about what happened, what time we got back, when the last time we saw him was, this and that. And while we're waiting outside, like, some dude neighbor was like, hey, what happened here? We're like, oh, he committed suicide. Like, oh, shit. Do you want a beer? It's like, yeah. So he grabbed us some beer. So we waited out, and then ended up there were several cops just kind of waiting around, after a few hours, and the coroner was doing his thing. And the cops were like asking us about us. So you guys just like stay at other people's houses when you travel? And we're like, yeah. And he's like, how long have you been doing that? I'm like, I've been doing it for like 5-6 years. He's like, what? So you just like, how do you find the people? I'm like, well, it's a website. He's like, that's so cool, man. I want to try that. So that was pretty cool. These cops got really into it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was Austin, where the cops are known to be pretty progressive anyway. But so then we rented a car, got the fuck out of there, and went to New Orleans. And New Orleans kind of changed my life, because that's when I realized I was a musician. Like, I'd always played music, but I had never considered myself a real musician. I'd always just done it for fun. And in New Orleans, I didn't have any money, and I made all my money playing music on the street with people. Started a little band, I guess, and then went back to Austin after a couple months in New Orleans, and was making more money on the street there. I did like a bunch of Craigslist jobs. Fucking like I did a test on a computer for a psychology department at the University of Texas, Austin. Just making oddball money, you know. And then the friend I was staying with, her mom I just bought a house that she needed to fix, that she paid me like $100 a day to come help her fix the house. And like, so I was like saving money. Yeah. So at that point in my mind, it was kind of like, I don't know. Everything was like taking care of itself. Like I knew that as long as I didn't care too much, money would come to me. Everything I needed came to me, you know, a place to stay, the money I needed, this and that. But yeah, but it still wasn't like fulfilling. It still felt like a fucking bum. You know, like, so I came back to California and my mom was kind of upset. She was kind of like crying one day, and she was like, Jordan, as a mom, I need you to be more like stable. I don't want to worry about you sleeping on streets and making money playing accordion on the streets. Man, I feel like I'm talking a lot.
No, that's the whole purpose.
Is it?
You're
I'm
on. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I got 100 questions. I haven't like actually gone to one of my questions because, well, it's been a great story so far.
Shit, I'm gonna have to cut up another mango. Yeah. So, fucking, my mom's all upset, and she's like, "Can I pay for you to go get your yoga certification or something, so I know like you have something you can do? You could travel and do yoga, teach yoga, blah blah blah." And I was like, I don't know, Mom, because I was going to go back to New Orleans because I love that place. So instead, I looked at more help exchange things, and I was about to go to Colombia. I found some hostels similar to the one I'm at now, a permaculture hostel that just in the forest that was making a farm that was also a hostel that people could come help out at. And anyway, I was about to buy my ticket there when I got a message from another place in Mexico, a holistic health healing retreat place, and they're like, hey, it looks like you'd be a good match here. If you want to come to Mexico, you know, let me know. So I got a hold of them, and I ended up going to southern Mexico, and I ended up being there for 6 months. That was last year. So my whole intent was to go be stationary somewhere. Like I signed a contract with them saying I'd be there for 3 months, which is crazy for me. Like promising I'll be somewhere for 3 months. But I was like, I have to do it. It's going to be good for me. I'm going to do it. I'm going to plant some seeds. I'm going to grow some roots. And I'm just going to like see what happens. And a lot happened. It was nice, but it was all kind of artificial. I ended up being the manager of this place for about a month. And I don't know, too many discrepancies with the guy that started it. He was an old man and I was a young guy, so he didn't like my ideas, as it goes. I got involved with another permaculture camp there. So I'm noticing a theme in what I'm saying is like everywhere I go, I end up with some kind of farm, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of goes hand in hand with the nomadic lifestyle, as you put it earlier, like traveling around. I feel like people that work with the earth, it's a lot less calculated, a lot less like analytical or critical about like quantifying your work, so to speak. People that work with the land, it's a lot more just about like your energy, if that makes sense. Like at this holistic health place, it was all about like how many hours per day you work, and you know you got to do this in order to receive your room and board, you know. Or even when you're working at a job, you have your pay stub. This is how many hours you work and how much is worth one of your hours. You know, your hour, 1 hour of your time is worth this much. So we're going to pay you this much. But when you're working with the earth, and as far as I'm concerned, all the people that have been quote unquote in charge of these projects, they've always been a lot more just like, you know, you come do your thing. And if it's not working for me, I'll let you know. And you know, if it's not working for you, you can leave. So it's like just a lot like more chill. And with that, when there's no like regulations and like pressure to do that, like everyone's happy and you actually are more productive. You know, you're more stoked. You're happy with your quote unquote boss. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that kind of thing is going on. And so I actually set up a volunteer page for this dude, Eli, down in Mexico. He was starting a permaculture ranch. and he needed volunteers and help. And I was like, well, I can't help you because I have to do this other work, but I can set you up a volunteer page. So he was stoked because he doesn't use the internet at all. And so we made him a volunteer page. So I was getting all the emails of people that wanted to come volunteer, like the people like me. And it was really neat. And so now he's still getting volunteers all the time, and it's great.
So question for you. So you say when you're working, like when people are working with the earth, they don't really like measure your hours. So is it just, you can just kind of tell if someone's working hard or if they're slacking? I mean, is there ever cases where there's somebody working on like a farm and it's just like, hey, that guy's not doing anything. He's just getting free room and board and he's just being lazy?
Yeah, well, I like to call it energy exchange, right? So, for example, here, I'm not doing much as far as the farm goes because I'm not here to do that. I messaged this dude before. I'm in Bali, right, Indonesia, and I messaged this dude a few weeks before getting here and said, hey, it looks like you could use a promo video. I have got some equipment with me and I'll be there, so if you want to let me stay for a week or so, I'll come make a video. He's like, yeah, sounds good. So in my head, I was all like worried, like, all right, I got to make sure I'm like working all the time, make sure he knows I'm not, talking out of my ass, like I'm actually going to do it. And, but meanwhile, the other volunteers were like working in the garden every day. They were getting stuff done. So I kind of felt bad, even though our agreement wasn't that I would garden. But anyway, I've now been here almost a month. Two of us have been here over a month. And I've been filming my ass off. It's turned in it's more than a promo video now. It's a fucking documentary on this dude and his expat subculture, and the permaculture scene, like a lot of shit. And, energy exchange, meaning like he knows I'm not gardening and this and that, but he also knows I'm not just slacking off, waiting around for the flood. I'm doing a bunch of shit, and it just so happens that we're both in line with each other. Like, I am doing this documentary because I believe in permaculture and I believe in what they're doing, and he knows that I believe in that, and that benefits him. But it's not about benefiting him or me. It's about benefiting the earth and the greater good, so to speak. So, like, it's cool. So I could stay here as long as I fucking wanted. It wouldn't be a big deal. And we share food and, like, it's all whatever. But when I was, like, coming here, I was more, like, tripping out. Like, okay, I got to make sure, like, he knows that, I'm going to be working on the video. But I would say, sorry, the workers are working on shit. I would say, yeah, it's like if someone's super slacking off, you have to have open communication about it. Like, yeah. But honestly, it's very rarely the case. Most people have a whole lot of integrity when they're doing situations like this. So, go figure.